All right, hello, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Here we are, day 5 of our DT cast, and today we're going to be talking about Matthew 6, 1 through 8.
Yeah, so we'll just dive right in. I was thinking about verse 1. It says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. And I focused on the word beware. The word beware, it's defined as to be cautious or alert to the dangers of. And I thought it was interesting, used in the context of beware of the dog, beware of the sinking sand. And I thought it's interesting how it doesn't just simply say, don't do this, don't practice your righteousness to be seen by others. And I think it's because there's this dose of realism there, acknowledging that we have this tendency to be like this, to want to be seen by others. And this tendency is strong, it's poised, it's always there. And it's almost like the sense that before you know it, you'll find yourself in this place. So be aware.
Yeah, and I think this is a really apt warning, because if you don't beware, I think what happens is you'll find that your whole Christian life actually ends up being about being seen before others and not by God. And that's a really dangerous place to be spiritually. And I think it becomes more and more tempting, actually, as you get older, with more responsibilities, with more roles. So it's very important then that we actually take heed of Jesus' advice here in this chapter.
So on that note about the topic of seeing, this theme, I was thinking about how it repeats many times in this passage. Verse 1, it says, in order to be seen by them. Verse 5, that they may be seen by others. Other times it says being praised by others. And there's also verse 4, verse 6, where it says, your Father who sees in secret. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And I was thinking about how it's true. There's always, with the theme of seeing, there are always two potential audiences with whatever we do, whether it's a lot of the day-to-day things, how we do DT or share DT, how I lead prayer meeting, how we behave at church, or how we're serving in ministry. And I think we do a lot of these things with mixed motivations, serving both audiences. And there's almost this element of us, I think sometimes for myself personally, almost being resigned to the fact that we serve both audiences and we have these mixed motivations. But Jesus is saying, but which audience do you really care about? That audience of one. And he's telling us here, how do we cultivate really caring about the audience of one? We'll try removing one of the audiences. And that's why he says the antidote is to do things in secret. Maybe do an act of love that nobody can see. Maybe no one responds to. Do it in secret. And that's an opportunity to say, this one is for you, God.
Yeah, and I think that really does something in our hearts, right? It helps us to cultivate a life like Jesus.
Yeah, I remember there was a time where even giving money for the first time in undergrad. My parents gave me some money and I knew I was stingy, so I just dropped it. I gave it for some fun, and it created so much room in my heart. Yeah, it did something. It's kind of hard to describe what it is.
Yeah. So I guess the question that we're then asking is, why is it so tempting to do acts of righteousness before others? Right? What do you gain by practicing righteousness before others so that we're seen by them? And I think ultimately we know you gain reputation, right? You gain clout. Maybe you gain a personal ego boost.
Feels good.
And that feels pretty good. I mean, you can imagine how addicting it is, right? When you receive praise, we all know that feeling, right? You get a compliment. It's like, oh, that's really good. And I think immediately we're tempted though to think oh, this is just for those people out there on TV or whatever, right? The celebrity pastors, right? You look at their clothes, you look at their lifestyle, it's like, oh yeah, they're clearly doing this to gain a showing. But at the same time, right, going back to that feeling, we all know what it's like to accept praise, or to someone to say, hey, you did a really good job, and you're like, yeah, give me more of that. It feels good. And so then maybe we can understand it's not so unrelatable, right? This feeling that these people are going for is actually something maybe we do all the time, right? If we do something decent, we're we really want people to know about that.
Instant gratification.
Yeah. And it's funny, I was even thinking about these DT videos we're doing, and this is just a silly story, but the other day I looked at, how many views did it get on one day versus another?
He's like, oh no.
Yeah, I'm are people watching anymore? And then all of a sudden it's not about, sharing and blessing other people. It's there's these little dreams in the back of my head about becoming a YouTube star, which I know are silly, but it's yeah, I can see how that could play out.
Yeah, so we'll talk about what we gain through, doing acts of righteousness before other people. But then, we talked a little bit about what there is to lose as well. And I think we lose out here. Jesus says we lose out on that reward in heaven. Jesus is not shy. The Bible's not shy about saying there's actually a reward in heaven.
Yeah, Apostle Paul talks about it.
Yeah. And, that's something to look forward to. And that should motivate us. But also we miss out on the original purpose and some of the rewards, that we would get from some of these acts as well. They're kind of, like I said, day-to-day acts, for instance, giving generously, with the right purpose, it leads to a more generous heart. There's a lot of joy in giving and meeting someone else's needs, or with praying. The original purpose is to connect with God. And if we're doing it not for other people, but for just that true purpose of connecting with God, we get to grow deeper with Him, fellowship with Him.
Yeah. So as I was thinking about this, I do think this does present a challenge, right, for anyone who's in any sort of leadership role, or even leading someone one-on-one or anything, right? Any sort of public role. On the one hand, we are called to bless others, right? In chapter 5, Jesus talks about doing your acts of righteousness being a light to the world so that others can see and then give glory to God. And
Let your
here,
light shine before others.
yeah, and here Jesus is saying, okay, do it in private. So is there a contradiction? Well,
Mhm.
I don't think so, right? I think ultimately, a big part of this is our motivation, right? It's when you're doing your acts of righteousness to point people towards God, your motivation is to point people towards God. And this is talking about those motivations where you're trying to point to yourself. And so how do we know the difference, right? And I just saw a quote from a commentator. I thought this was helpful. He said this, show when tempted to hide, and hide when tempted to show. Now, I'm not going to explain that. I'll just let you chew on those words, but show when tempted to hide, and hide when tempted to show. And I think that could give you a little bit of a framework to think about, which situation is this? Is this pointing to God or is this pointing to me?
All right, that's all for today.
All right, see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.